You've seen this abuse. You've seen this affect American workers?
Oh, yes. Thousands and thousands of American workers. And it's not coming off 5 years of unemployment line. These are workers that have been working decades in these companies who are doing a great job, nothing against them in their employment file, and they're being told by the hundreds. They get together and say, hey, all of you are being fired. You're all being replaced by these new workers. In the end, the workers are paid a lot less, and the bonuses at the end of the year for those CEOs go up dramatically. The foreign workers, like you said, have to have that visa support by the employer. So how are they going to change jobs if they're being paid little and they're being worked to death and the conditions are not great? But what are they going to do? They're stuck with those employers. So they are suffering. And the winner in this isn't the foreign worker. The winner is not the American worker. It's the CEO and the executives who are making millions of dollars off of this.
America as a nation has sovereignty over our borders and our territory. We get to control who comes in and who doesn't, not the corporations. And Americans' government is supposed to be serving the interest of the American people, not the whole world, not the third world, not India, and not corporate executives. The American people. Absolutely egregious.
The H-1B visa bill was written in 1990. It lets companies recruit foreign talent for emerging engineering and scientific jobs. But loopholes allow for outsourcing of American jobs to foreign workers, often at lower pay. Bill Whitaker spoke to some Americans displaced by H-1B visa workers for Sunday's 60 Minutes.
They're not just fired and replaced with third world Indians. They're required to train those third world Indians to take their job. Can you imagine? It's like being required to go find your wife a boyfriend. It's disgusting.
They say they were asked to train workers who would take their jobs.
It wasn't called training your replacement. It was called knowledge transfer.
Craig D'Angelo worked for Northeast Utilities, now called Eversource, and was one of 220 IT workers replaced by H-1B visa employees.
And just multiply this by hundreds of thousands. So now we have these jobless, underemployed American citizens, so we can import hundreds of thousands of third world migrants who have no affinity to America or our culture or our values. They never assimilate. They're not even supposed to stay. The whole point of an H-1B visa is 3 years, maybe extendable to 6 years, and then they're supposed to go home, but they do not. They don't go home. They stay, like an un-American cancer in our body politic, because we give them green cards, or we let them transition to some other visa category that lets them stay. And then we make them paperwork American citizens, like Dinesh D'Souza. Scratch them and you find another Indian ethno-fascist. Why do we need those in America?
D'Angelo says his replacement, a worker from India, told him he was making half D'Angelo's salary with no benefits.
No benefits. On some of these visa categories, they don't have to pay FICA for these employees. That saves the company another 15%. On top of the 50%. And we're supposed to believe the reason they're hiring these people, often at entry-level positions, by the way, often at menial positions, is because Americans are incapable of doing these jobs. No, Americans are not capable of doing these jobs at 35% of the pay. Is that what we want? We want a race to third world standards of income and living? That's our vision for America? That's what we're going to sell our next generation? Go. Get married, have children. You too can live at third world levels of poverty. Enjoy it. And by the way, we're going to take your tax money and give it away. Give it away to tens of millions of illegal migrants. Give them free housing, free health care, free food, free spending money, free education. And you get to pay for it. We're going to make you impoverished, but we're still going to make you pay taxes. Why wouldn't America want that? Matt Morris notes, we don't have a shortage of American talent. We do not have a shortage of STEM graduates. And we most certainly do not have a problem with young Americans that don't want to work. By the way, I think we may have a problem with STEM graduates. I've got to be honest with you, because I think what's happened is, I think there's good reason to believe that our good STEM graduates are going to come from the blue areas of this IQ map. And if you exclude those people from STEM programs and you replace them with people from yellow and red areas on this map, you don't end up with very good STEM graduates. You end up with dumbed down STEM graduates. And I can tell you, this nation has a need for A grade STEM graduates, but we have zero need for C grade STEM graduates. So if you've poisoned the educational system, so you've driven out all the white males who traditionally excelled at every one of these things we say we need, technology, moon landing, winning World War II, the Manhattan Project, you forcibly exclude those white males in preference to other demographics that do not perform as well cognitively. You end up with a lot of shitty STEM graduates. Sure, they have the degree. What good is that? They're dummies. Nobody needs dumb STEM graduates. So that could be a real problem. We could be turning out a lot of STEM graduates that simply are not actually up to the job. And by the way, I don't mean to be critical of STEM. I'm trained in STEM. I did my graduate work in molecular biology, immunology, virology, a lot else at Harvard University. I did my STEM stuff. But I can tell you also in the legal profession, it's the same problem. We aggressively drove demographics into the legal profession that as an average, not all, not every individual, people should be judged as individuals when you're dealing with them one-on-one, but as classes, I can tell you 90% of lawyers out there probably do not need to be lawyers. They're not cognitively or temperamentally suited to being top shelf attorneys. Can they be mid-level attorneys? Yeah, sure. And there's work for them too. Can they get a job in government with a JD in their back pocket? Do we really need them in those jobs? Don't they just cause trouble there? But when you tell the whole world you can go to law school, you can get a STEM degree, you don't end up with millions of top-grade STEM graduates. You just don't. There just are not that many people who can operate at that level. What you're producing is generations of shitty STEM students, shitty lawyers, and shitty everything else. Anyway, he says, we don't have a shortage of STEM graduates. We have a problem as a corporate lobby groups actively pushing to replace young American workers with low-wage H-1B foreign labor. By the way, when I say we have a lot of shitty STEM graduates, I don't mean to suggest that they're in any way inferior to the Indian STEM graduates. They're even worse because their credentials are just faked outright. They're just frauds. Keep in mind, he writes, these are young Americans that have had the entire system stacked against them. I think he's really talking about white males here. They were discriminated against in universities. They were discriminated against in the hiring systems. And now on top of all that, they're being replaced by a low-wage, low-skill workforce from India. Is that deniable? America first means placing Americans first. Anything else is unacceptable. This account I won't try to pronounce says there are 13 million manufacturing jobs in the U.S. There are 32 million immigrant workers. That means if you as a Native American want to work in the sector, you have to compete with 2.5 foreigners willing to take less pay. You are literally cooked before you apply. And look at some of these H-1B jobs. I've shared this kind of stuff for you before. This is just an example. There are tens of thousands of 7-Eleven cashiers being filled with H-1Bs. What country do you think they come from, by the way? What do you think the nationality is of a 7-Eleven cashier working on an H-1B visa? You think there's any possibility they're Indian? That their last name is Patel? Unbelievable. These are jobs that Americans can't do? This guy's being sarcastic, of course. Oh, America needs the H-1B program to survive. That's the ugly truth. You think you're going to teach an American how to work a cash register? We simply don't have the cognitive capability. Every time I enter a 7-Eleven, my primitive American brain can barely comprehend what I'm seeing. This is where H-1B jobs are going. And of course, not just this, but as we saw, middle, upper level management, Americans being thrown out of work to give those jobs to Indians. And every time you see someone say, well, you know, we should like Indians here. After all, the Indians who are here, they're among the highest earners and the highest taxpayers. You MFer. That job wouldn't disappear if the Indian wasn't here. It would be filled by an American, and the American would be the high earner and the high taxpayer. That's not a plus of importing Indians. That just tells me they're taking our best jobs. Jobs.now says it's an insane scandal that the government-sponsored enterprises like Freddie Mac, government institutions in the executive branch of government, are hiding jobs for immigrants for entry-level finance roles, like this one here in Texas, financial modeling development professional. They promote these jobs in ways that only Indians will see them. And this happens at the federal level, happens at the state level, happens at universities and colleges, happens everywhere. Red Wave Press says attorney that has worked on cases where H-1B visa holders have replaced Americans. Let's just listen to the clip.
The H-1Bs right now are not going to shipbuilders.
Because you don't build ships here.
Well, yeah, but also
that's why they're
because
not
if
going
you're
to.
building, hold on, if you're building ships for the U.S. military, you're probably not doing it on an H-1B. That's the first thing. But the second thing is they're trying to sort of like shoehorn this policy into their tariff policy, and it's really not that. I do think the H-1B program needs some attention. It needs some degree of reform.
Abby, do you want the next Einstein to come to America or to Shanghai? What do you want?
It's about fighting for talent and people that are brilliant.
I'm not fighting.
So I generally like this guy. Kevin O'Leary works for the administration. Successful businessman. Do you want the next Einstein to come to America or go to Shanghai? It's such a lie. H-1Bs are not for Einsteins. If they were Einsteins, why would we want them here on only a 3-year visa? Come here for 3 years and then we want you to go? Is that what we did with Einstein? We accepted Einstein into the U.S., but only for 3 years, and then we sent him back to Germany? These are different categories of people, and we have different visas for them. For genuine Einsteins, the 20 people on the face of the earth who would qualify under that standard, there's not tens of thousands of Indians who are Einsteins coming to America on 3-year H-1B visas. If there's an Einstein, we have a visa category. It's the O-1 visa. Ignoring the fact that we already have visas for training and extraordinary people can come over via O-1. But we've handed out millions of green cards for so-called experts over decades. And yet apparently, Americans are still not trained. We brought all these people in to train us on 3-year visas. We're still not trained. And of course, we have the O-1s for the genuine geniuses. And they want to end H-1 visa abuse. Isn't it really all abuse? What percentage of the H-1B program is not abuse? Could it even be 5 or 10 or 15%? Don't we all know that 80 to 90% of the H-1B visa program, we know 85% of the people under H-1B are coming from one country, India. This is what happens when you let low-trust third-world societies exploit high-trust first-world policies. It's like if you had a neighbor. You move into a neighborhood, or a new neighbor moves into yours, and he comes over and he says, hey, can I borrow a screwdriver? Can I borrow a hammer? And you say, sure. In fact, anytime you need to borrow a tool, there's my toolbox. Just help yourself. And then you come home from work, and your whole toolbox is gone. And you go to him and you say, did you take my whole toolbox? And he goes, oh, yeah. Well, you told me I could just help myself. And you said, well, okay, that's not quite what I meant. But anyway, could I have it back? And he says, well, actually, I've loaned out a bunch of those tools to fellow Indians. And I'm not sure when I'm going to get them back. But don't worry about it. It'll all be good. Wouldn't you feel a little exploited that you offered a kindness and they took advantage of it to a degree that would be unimaginable to a first world neighbor? We all know as first worlders, for example, you borrow someone's car, you borrow someone's vehicle. What do you do when you return it? You return it with a full gas tank, right? Even if, by the way, the value of the gas is more than really what you got out of borrowing the vehicle. But they were nice enough to lend you the vehicle. You return it with a full gas tank. You think low-trust societies do that? Low-trust societies siphon the rest of the gas out of the car. And you're a sucker for letting that happen. It's all abuse. Trump Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Remmer deploying every tool to end H-1B abuse. I don't know how much of it is not H-1B abuse. There's a lot going on here. If H-1B visas were about bringing the best talent on the planet, it would not be 71% from India. There would be tons of Germans, Poles, Russians. The H-1B is a scam for cheap slave labor. We've all seen these stats. 71% of H-1Bs from one nation, India. The rest from China, 600,000 Chinese spies in our universities. And the rest of the world is an infinitesimal fraction. Can't we just see on the face that this is a completely abused and exploitative process? They're bringing in accountants, dishwashers, entry-level tech support. Those are jobs Americans can't do, at least some American demographics. That's what I'm supposed to believe. I simply don't believe it. We're talking about different categories of people. Do we need highly skilled engineers? Maybe that would be helpful. But in fact, that's not what they're doing. And a big part of the administration is failing to read the room. Trump promises to continue crackdown on H-1B abuse. You know, I got to agree with 9mm SMG here. They're failing to read the room. People don't care about cracking down on abuse. We want H-1B removed entirely. Entirely. And if that's going to take a transition period of 3 or 4 or 5 years, all right, say that. Say that. We have a plan to eradicate H-1B. It won't happen this year. The plan is to, every year for 5 years, we're going to reduce it by 20%. By the 5th year, it's done. That'll give our companies a time to adjust. However corrupt the system is, it's the system we've been telling everyone to operate under. You can't just pull the drug away from them without them going into withdrawals. But we'll cut it 20% a year for 5 years. By the 5th year, it's all done. And I think most Americans would accept that. And we already have O-1 visas for the handful of true Einsteins.